So let's get started. Let me introduce you to Dr. Melissa Vito. She is our cat in the corner office today. This interview is a series that we offer online that feature distinguished alumni, and I'm really pleased today to welcome Melissa to our stage here. I'm Melinda Burke, president of the Alumni Association, and actually I've known our guest for quite a long while. So Melissa, welcome. It's nice to have you here today.
Thanks, Melinda.
Melissa is actually a nationally recognized leader in the field of student affairs and university administration. Dr. Vito is a Tucson native and a lifelong Wildcat, and she's enjoyed a distinguished career at the University of Arizona. She currently serves as Senior Vice President for Student Affairs and Enrollment Management and Senior Vice Provost for Academic Initiatives and Student Success. And she's going to explain the difference between those two titles, I'm sure. Her role spans both the traditional areas of student affairs and enrollment and also includes the academic areas of branch campus, distance, and online education. Under her leadership, the UA launched the 100% Engagement Initiative, which ensures that all undergraduate students have meaningful curricular or co-curricular experiences, such as internships, volunteer experiences, research, and travel. Dr. Vito has also received national recognition for her leadership and innovation from the American College Personnel Association, Pi Kappa Alpha, and the NASPA Foundation for Student Affairs Administrators in Higher Education. She was also recognized by Tucson's 40 Under 40 Award as Mentor of the Year in 2013. So Melissa, again, I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Melinda.
And so the first question is, I've known you a long time, but I also am looking forward to the answer to this question, is tell us a little bit more about what you do in your role as Senior Vice President and Senior Vice Provost.
Okay. Actually, I have a very interesting role because at the Senior Vice President piece of me puts me into sort of the institution's executive leadership. So that's a fun place to be because we think about the bigger issues that face the university and look at how we all work together to move us forward. But in that role, I oversee everything from our pipeline programs, building access for students to enrollment, financial aid, and the traditional student affairs areas of everything from dean of students to career services and everything sort of in between, residence life, the bookstore, financial aids, and student unions. But the Senior Vice Provost piece is actually really fun because it's given me an opportunity. I've had this title for about 3 years to also work some in the academic areas. And so I oversee our branch campus in Sierra Vista, all of our distance learning, and so that's everything from Chandler, where we teach classes, Yuma, Sierra Vista, Douglas, Nogales, to Phnom Penh, Ocean, China. So we are developing a broader global reach in distance, and then also developing our online education. We were one of the first large universities in the country to take our online and distance-focused outreach areas, and rather than have them run parallel to the rest of the university, so that goals weren't necessarily integrated and they had a parallel structure, we integrated them into the whole leadership area and enrollment. And so I think about online as how we help give access for students, how we make sure that our traditional students who may need to leave can take online classes, and then how we build more corporate relations where we get in and are able to convey education to workforce, both credit and non-credit.
That's fantastic. How large is your team? You must have a huge team.
It's a lot.
Yeah,
it's over 3,000 people.
Oh my
so
gosh.
It's big. And we also, I'm really proud of the fact that we have over half of the students who work on campus work in our division. And so it's a pretty big group.
So there's a lot there to talk about. So did you realize when you were a student at the University of Arizona that this career path existed? That you could actually do something like this in a university setting?
I had absolutely no idea. I started college young. I'd skipped a grade and was young when I started school. So I came to school really not sure what I wanted to do. All I knew about the campus were Swede Johnson, who I knew was a vice president here. His kids were friends of mine, and they'd been friends of my parents. I'd heard of the dean of students. I figured that was somebody, only then it was like dean of men, dean of women, that you just didn't ever want to meet. And I had no real thought about the profession. I really thought I would grow up and be an author
Really?
write books, or a poet.
What was your major?
It was English and journalism.
Oh.
It was English literature for a long period of time, and then because I was young, I figured, well, I'll pick up another major. So I picked up journalism. So two writing-focused areas, although definitely different styles of how you write, but learned a lot.
So at what point did you look around you and realize, God, this could be a career?
Not until I'd started working. I graduated thinking, I think I want to be probably a reporter, or maybe work in public relations. I needed to be in Tucson at that time, so I wasn't looking to leave Tucson, and I literally took the first job that I got offered. I was, not sure and nervous, and it was a position in the financial aid's office here to develop all their brochures and written materials.
Really?
They had no pamphlets, no catalogs, and so I came in thinking, okay, I'll do this. I did a lot of freelance writing at that time, and I still thought I will end up, writing in some form. But a couple of years in, and a promotion or two along the way, and I remember, because I worked in the administration building then, I knew there was somebody on the fourth floor who was a vice president, who actually, ironically, was a chemistry professor. And I thought to myself, actually, that's the job I want.
Really?
Yeah, and so I did probably early on start to realize this was a profession. It was actually a pretty cool profession. You could impact people's lives in really positive ways and be creative. And but I thought that's actually where I want to end up, and so
it was sort of by mistake, or not by mistake,
totally,
but by accident,
totally
right? Being in the right
serendipitously.
place at the right time.
Yeah.
So how do young students, undergrads today, how would they find out about careers in higher education?
I have grad students who can shadow me, mentor me, but for anybody who's out there, just talk to people. Talk to somebody who's in the role, or you can look at the professional associations like NASPA, National Association of Student Personnel Administrators, or American College Personnel Association, ACPA, also have websites that list a lot of different information for students. There are graduate programs across the country in higher education, educational leadership, or student affairs, and all of those create sort of pathways. But I would say for me, I actually early on started seeking out people who were in jobs that looked interesting to me, and I would just go talk to them.
Like an information gathering interview, just show up and talk
whether
to them?
Both in higher ed and outside of higher ed. But if I saw somebody doing something I thought was interesting, I would just make an appointment and see if they would take some time and meet with me, and then I would just ask them about what they did, how they got there, what they do, and what advice they would have for somebody who was trying to figure out kind of where they want to be for their next step. And I always got advice. I learned early on that people love to talk about themselves, and they love to feel like they're helping someone. And so I think seeking out mentors, or just seeing people who are doing things that look like they might be interesting, is also really important to do in life.
And so your undergraduate major was English journalism. Are there programs that you think prepare an undergrad for a career in higher ed? It sounds like a grad program is required.
I think a grad
degree?
program at some point. A lot of people end up in student affairs who worked as resident assistants in residence life when they were undergraduates, or who maybe were peer advisors, or involved in student government or Greek life, because a lot of those students see the pathway because they develop close connections with staff who are here, or they develop the skills that help them understand this is really part of a profession. So I would say that's a really good entry point. I did some things, but I wasn't probably aware enough to realize those were things that could have prepared me for this role. I actually think academically, at the undergraduate level, do anything you want. Just do it well, because it really is about a graduate program beyond that and the kinds of experiences you have. Journalism was really a good preparation for me. It's a way of thinking that I think served me well in this role and serves anybody well. You always think about kind of what's my lead, what's most important, what is my audience wanting to know, whether that's an audience of one or an audience of 100, and also how to ask questions, how to kind of think the next thought and ask that follow-up question, which is helpful in meetings, It's helpful in conversation. And so ironically, when people ask me, what degrees have been important to you, I have a graduate degree in ed leadership. That's my doctorate. I've got a master's in counseling and another one in higher ed administration. And all of those gave me particular academic pieces. But in terms of a way to think, I think my journalism degree has served me well.
That's great. And it sounds like networking. You talk about networking and finding a mentor have played a really important piece for you.
Yes, they have.
To look around you and see who's around you and have conversations.
Yeah, and seek people out. I mean, if you're in a meeting with somebody and somebody says something that seems interesting, follow up with them. My mother was an awesome mentor for me. She started her career at age 50, and so I was old enough then to actually see what she was doing. And I learned a lot watching her, and I've learned a lot about how you treat your team, how you build a team, networking, mentoring. And I think she gave me a model of how you connect. And that's really it. People want to work with others who can connect well. And so I would say look around. And for undergraduates, really what you do right after you graduate may not be what you do 5 years later or 3 years later. So it's about taking that first step. Student affairs is an awesome, actually, array of skills that can take you into any profession.
So when you say student affairs, just for our viewers, tell me what all does that include?
It's really, so let's say student affairs and enrollment. So everything from admissions and financial aid to marketing to dean of students areas to advising student government to working with career services to leadership programs. So it's a diversity areas, our cultural centers. So it's a pretty broad array.
There are a lot of opportunities in that area.
There are a lot of opportunities, and you also learn skills. I have friends who've become event planners who started in student affairs. I have friends who've started leadership consulting programs out of their work in student affairs and enrollment. And so it really can be a great pathway to whatever you do next.
And so, because of your perspective on the university, are there other career paths that exist within a university setting?
Tons. I mean, there really are. I look around here. I have friends who went to the U of A, who went into private practice in law firms, who've come back here. One serves as legal advisor for student government. Others work in other parts of campus. Some work as lawyers here. And so, the university, if you think about it, is really a small town. So there are people who work in facilities here, in planning, architects, faculty, teaching and doing research. It's an enormous area of thousands of people that people liken to a small town, and really it is. And so there are all kinds of pathways where you can take what you're learning and do it here.
I think that is so true, and you just don't recognize that till you get into one of these roles and look around you and see what kind of jobs exist here, career paths. So if you were going to advise someone, not necessarily a student, but this is a great place to work, how do you advise people that ask you, how do I get a job at the U of A? Do you get that question?
I get asked
often?
that. Actually, that's a question I get asked probably weekly, at least. And, I always say, tell me what you're thinking about. What would that look like and what are you interested in? And most people say it just looks like it would be a fun place to work or an exciting place to work. A university is an accumulation of people and ideas, and there is a vibrance to a university that is pretty exciting. And so that's, I think, what attracts people. So then we talk about skills, what you've got, what you might have. I encourage people to do the typical things like check websites, check with HR. I talk about your program. I talk to a lot of alumni, and really you've done such an awesome job through your leadership and in some ways partnering with career services to really expand the sense of opportunity for our alums who a lot are mid-career or trying to think of the next move. So look at it that way. And I get a lot of resumes. I give people a lot of feedback and then try to help people maybe take a step or connect with people. And so I'll encourage people to go talk to others, to look into things, and use the resources that we have.
Great. That's great advice. Thank you. All right, so let's move a little bit and talk about building teams, because I do think one of the things I so admire about you is the team that you have built and your ability to identify talent and then help people move along in their careers. So
Thank you.
can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, thanks, Melinda. Again, when I talked about sort of my mom and what I learned from her, that was like a key thing. You have to surround yourself with an awesome team. And I saw her build that in her career, and I early on realized I needed to do that. And so team has always been important. And I would say things that are important to me about team is, one, I look for people who are flexible and fun and smart and well-balanced, who have some skill. I think people can take on roles they never thought they would do if they have all the right qualities. And so I look for qualities probably before I look for everything else. And then I look for opportunities for people. And so I'm a tap people on the shoulder kind of person. I look for team members who have things I don't have. And so I think I'm a good strategic thinker, but I don't love all the details. And so I need to make sure I've got people on my team who are thinking details that can help balance me out. And so I look for team members who have things I don't have, who have the ability to think big. A sense of optimism is really important. And so I look for people who are half full people, half glass full people.
How do you assess that?
You know, through
Is that just
conversation.
conversation?
You know, just through talking. You know, you can talk about a situation and understand how people respond. That will give you an idea of how people view the world, and because those are people who inspire others. And then I try to surround myself with the smartest people that I know, and give people opportunity. I have a strong vision generally for where I want to go, so I'm pretty clear with big picture things, and I'm pretty dynamic in giving feedback to people, and I have high expectations. But I learned from my mom, if you expect the best from people, most people live up to your expectations. So I try to give people a lot of flexibility. But I also have been known to work with staff if I don't think this is a great fit. And I think it's really important to create opportunities for people to succeed. So where I might think that somebody's in an awesome role for them, or they may think that, if it's not working, but I believe in that person, then we will try to work together to figure out maybe another opportunity. And a lot of times that works. Sometimes it doesn't. And you sometimes have to make challenging decisions, and those aren't easy. But really, for the most part, people want to do well. And when somebody's not doing well and they're trying hard, sometimes you end up setting people free if you create some other opportunity for them. So there's a lot of hard stuff that I've learned along the way. But
that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So it must be rewarding when you see them move on to other universities or find promotions that are a result of your mentorship. So you got this great Mentor of the Year recognition in 2013. What were you doing? What do you think makes you a Mentor of the Year?
I am really, honestly, I think it is just, trying to lift people up, talking to people. My team, they know I believe in them. I mean, my person who's leading online education and engagement and career came straight out of the faculty. It's a full professor who was an associate dean in a college, and I literally would be in meetings with him and we wouldn't necessarily agree, but he had so much energy. I just thought, that's the person.
That's the one.
And so I think I tell my staff, if people want to shadow me for a day, figure out what my life is like, that's fine. Try to create opportunities. We set up a staff development team. When I started in as a vice president, we're having our 10th symposium tomorrow.
Is that right?
Yeah, and
which is just an internal
thing. We invite
professional
external people to our keynote speaker. We're looking at campus activism, but what we realized is that I have awesome nationally recognized team members in the division who present all over the country, but rarely present to each other. So it's a day where people can connect and where they can also share their expertise, and it's an annual symposium. We do kickoff events where we'll just people can just ask me questions, talk about stuff. I have different levels of my leadership team, and so I try to engage as many people as possible. Do some lunches that are sort of casual with different departments to just sort of learn. I tell when we do a lunch that has a full staff there that this is that opportunity for those of you who feel like you can't tell your boss an idea to share it with me. And you know,
That's great.
it's an array of. I mean, I think it's you change people's lives through big things and little things. So it's also just having a sort of open, friendly kind of approach
Awesome.
to everyone.
So do you mentor in a formal way? Do you actually have someone that will come to you and say, "I'd like you to be my mentor," or
I
does
do.
it tend to be more organic?
I have both. And actually, I think sort of formalized mentoring programs are kind of like arranged dates. And so they can work or they can not work because there is a little bit of a chemistry to a mentorship. And so I have some people now who I mentor who've asked if I would mentor them. And I meet with them semi-regularly. We talk about what's going on. They can email me if they've got questions. And, you know, some of them have a specific thing they're working on, like I want to get into a doctoral program and I'm trying to figure out what that could be, to I'm trying to figure out what my next step is. And so those are kind of formal relationships. And then I have a lot of informal ones too. And I try to check in with people. I mean, you know, my team has to feel like I value work life with them. And so I try to also understand to the extent that it's possible the pressures that everybody's under.
So that's actually another great topic because I would think in your role, work-life balance would be almost impossible to achieve. So can you talk a little bit about it? How do you do that?
It's it has to be a conscious decision. So you have to decide that work-life balance is important, and it's going to be critical to how I move through my life. I tell my team, and it's what I've learned, you can have everything, but not necessarily all at the same time and to the same degree. And so I think about my role. When I was Dean of Students, I was married with twin sons who, when I became Dean of Students, were probably about 5 or 6.
Wow.
And big job, but yet a lot of flexibility, 24 hours, but a team of people to support me. And although an important position on campus, not necessarily the level I'm at right now. I became more of a single mom when they went into middle school. I always had an awesome group of friends, but I would still try to, on Fridays, if I could get to their classroom or do a field trip or schedule things, it was always important to me that my family was first, because you only have one chance to be a mom. And so I would say family first, but that doesn't mean that there weren't stresses on it. And then the role I'm in now, I could never have had little kids and be in this role. But this is an awesome role. And I've been, you know, I'll step out of a meeting if I've got a text from my son, you know, and I still will prioritize my kids. But the level that I operate at now allows me to still have a conscious sense of balance, but the pressures are different. And I couldn't have done this with little kids.
So what would you say to a young grad, a new alum joining a company? How does a young person work to get that work-life balance? Because we know that's very important to our graduates, right?
It is. I think you have to set boundaries in a way that aren't rigid. And so you have to know that you're in a place where you're proving yourself. We're always sort of in some ways proving ourselves. And so you have to figure out when you're going to exercise. You have to build in things. You have to build in time to connect with friends. But then when you're building your career, you also have to build in enough flexibility to know that actually today I may not get to run 5 miles, it may be a mile, or it may be tomorrow, because you're still building your work. And so I think a flexibility that allows you to continue to prioritize but to move it around is really important. So, I mean, but you have to, I mean, I calendar things in. Today my assistant wanted to schedule an early meeting for me, and I knew last night was a late night and I'd been out a lot, and I said, actually, no, I don't have to do that tomorrow. I'm going to need some time to exercise, and that's my best opportunity. And so I think you learn when you can do that. But you have to be also a high performer too.
Yeah, it sounds and very organized.
And organized.
So that's it's not something you automatically get in a new job. Being a performer, I think, is a really important component of that.
It is. And so that's why flexibility is important. And so you may prioritize something personal that you're doing, But you also may at 9 o'clock check your emails and do a quick response, which lets your boss know you're paying attention.
Right. I
And
think that is really an important point.
Yeah.
So were there any earlier, like, you reflect on experiences you had early in your career that really were formative?
You know, I would say I learned early on that it's important to say yes, and not everybody does that. I mean, I grew up, my dad owned a restaurant, and so I grew up with sort of a more business-focused approach to what I do. But I was a young professional when I started working in financial aids, and I worked in a group of people who were decades older than me. And I saw how students would come in and need money, and people would just kind of callously say, well, you know, your check will be ready in 2 weeks. And I just thought, this is awful.
Yeah.
This is somebody's food, or this is, you know, and I early on just thought, that's not a good way to treat people. And so I think learning to say yes is really important. Or maybe it's an awesome idea and let me think about it, but never lead with no. It's a negative way to describe it, but that served me really well, and it's something that I learned early on looking around.
I think that's incredible advice. Yeah, never lead with no. So it also sounds like empathy is something you really value, right?
I do.
That sounds like you're a very empathetic individual.
I think I am.
I think you are too. But how does that? I mean, I guess you've really talked a bit about how that's influenced the way you respond to people.
You know, it's interesting. It's a really important personal quality. We were having a conversation in my office about whether empathy is something you can. It's just part of who you are, or can you teach people to have empathy? And I'm not sure that we came to a conclusion. My new communications guy was telling me that actually the new buzzword in marketing is empathetic marketing. And I think it is, at the end of the day, the ability to always put yourself in the place of somebody else. So if I'm trying to get a group of people to do something, so earlier in my career when we were looking at the student union, which was falling apart, and, you know, trying to rally people to come together to support rebuilding our student union, I kind of learned early on that if I looked around a room and thought about what was important to each of the people there and could find a way to address it, that I could get more people to support what I wanted to do. And I actually think that's kind of a practical application of empathy. I mean, my ability to put myself in somebody else's shoes, to understand what it feels like to be somebody in facilities management, bringing out buckets when the roof is leaking, or to understand, to just understand what somebody is feeling, I think is important to being a good person, but it's also a really important part of how you succeed in the business world. It helps me communicate better.
Especially at your level.
Yeah.
I mean, you're at a position, such an influential position that's an incredibly important quality. So I have now received a few questions from our audience,
All right.
and I'm going to.
I'll have a glug of Red Bull.
Yes, you take a little drink there, and I'm going to remind the audience that we are interested in questions. So please be sure and send them our way. Melissa is a wealth of advice and information. So here's one that I've got that is about successes and failures. So how have successes and maybe even failures, more importantly, shaped who you are today, to be the leader you are today? And congrats, this is from Phi Mo, class of 97.
Oh, Phi, hey.
Oh, you know Phi.
I do,
All right,
Phi. I was following your 22-day challenge.
Oh, good.
Yeah, awesome.
Well, congrats,
Great to see
by
you.
the way, on your success as a nationally
Thanks,
recognized
Phi.
leader. Phi says, I had the privilege of learning from you when I was a student. Well, that's great.
Yeah, no, Phi was one of the early groups when we established the Asian American Pacific Student
how great.
Association.
Well, thank you for the question, Phi. And go ahead and comment on that, success and failure.
Success and failure. So, big thing that I've learned through successes and failures is follow my gut.
Oh, interesting.
I would say my biggest successes at the end of the day, I've relied on my gut to help me message what I wanted to do, to help me pull together a team, you know, all the way around. And my biggest probably failures have also been when I didn't listen to my gut. So I would say that's for those of us at any level, when you're getting into a situation or you're trying to move an agenda forward, you're trying to rethink something, if you've got a little voice saying to you, add this person to the meeting, or check this out, or this may not be the best time to do this. Listen to that, okay? Because I've learned that, and I've learned that I tell my team this: every idea has its time, and so some of my successes and failures have been built around timing, and so trying to move ideas forward. We were building the student union, and career services was in Old Main. Some people loved it there, others didn't. Looking at all sorts of other places they could go, and actually the timing was kind of perfect to say, why don't you move to our new student union? We'll move out Arizona Public Media. We can get something done at Park Student Union. The idea had been out there for probably a decade, but the timing wasn't right. When we were reorganizing, when I first came into the vice president's role a few years ago, time of terrible budget cuts, laid off over 30 people one day. It was terrible, and talked to everybody. But out of that, I kept thinking we do have some opportunities, and I pulled a bunch of people together, and that was the birth of the think tank.
Oh, really?
And so so my successes are also, that was the right time. It wasn't the right time to keep a lot of disparate services. It was the right time. The English department had to withdraw funding for the Writing Center. I could find $10,000 to put into that. So my gut was telling me go for it, and this was a time to move forward. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest things I've learned. And in failures, if you can't pull groups of people together who can, after a period of time, all want to support you, it just might not be the right time to do that. It might be a great idea, but the wrong time. And in failure, you learn things. We were looking years ago, I had members of my staff who really wanted, and students, to pull together to a broader multicultural center. Became known as sort of a community center. In my gut, I kept thinking, I'm not sure this is the right time for this idea. We'd gone through a lot of budget cuts. People were not feeling great. And I was in that balance of wanting to support my team, but knowing my gut made me uneasy. And at the end of the day, we pulled that one back. It wasn't the right time. And it really, although there was support, there were a group of people who were made to feel worse by it. And so I learned there, as much as I want to support my team in pursuing their dreams, if I, in my heart or gut, believe this isn't going to play out well, I actually need to sometimes step in and say, not right now, or let's change this up.
Great, that's fascinating. So innovation seems to be a very big part of your world as well. I mean, I think you do a lot of innovating. So is it different? I mean, it's sort of wound in around everything you're talking about, but do you have a process for innovation?
I would say part of it is the way that I think. I mean, I just sort of by nature somebody who challenges whatever the prevailing beliefs are. So it's thinking about, we were talking about this the other day because we're looking at rebuilding Bear Down Gym, the library, into a whole new success area. And I was in a meeting with people, and we were talking about things, and I said, so here's the thing, we shouldn't be talking about what we think that building should have when it opens, let's say in a couple of years, based on what students are doing now. We should be thinking about everything we're doing based upon what students will be doing in 2025. So how do you simultaneously think about how we do our best work, but always keep an eye on the future? And so I do it by actually thinking what's going on in grade schools. What movies are people watching? What books are out there? How do people deal with stress? I started looking a few years ago at the rising levels of anxiety that high school students are reporting. So we built mindfulness into some of the work we're doing in our residence halls. Fortunately, my residence life director is awesome and believed in it, but really it was on a hope and a prayer. Probably the biggest proponents of that now are the RAs who've gone through the training. But Time Magazine cover story 2 weeks ago, rising levels of anxiety among high school students. And so, but I saw that earlier, but it's how you connect the dots. So I'm kind of rambling. So I would say you have to be future focused. You have to think about what you're doing and be focusing on what you think the needs are going to be in 10 years. You have to not jump on every trend, okay? And you have to know what's real, and you have to turn upside down prevailing beliefs. So if everybody believes that this is the way you need to do it, it's worth asking kind of what's the bigger goal, and is there a different way to do things? One of the proudest pieces that we have on campus right now in my books is Innovate UA, which is a completely student-driven, cross-disciplinary group of students who have come together around innovation. And out of that, they do a 2-day hackathon that's one of the largest in the Southwest, a pitch fest to pitch ideas. And early on, when they had no place to go, we put a little money into this, but it's really fully student done. But I knew that that's where we could generate some innovative ideas.
That's awesome.
So I think you have to create a safe space for people to fail too.
Yeah.
And I would say that one other thing about that is I'm known for using the word pilot to do things, because really in most settings nobody wants to do anything different. But I can get people to try a new idea if you just say it's going to be a pilot, and we'll test it this year. So as a strategy to innovate, I think you have to find baby steps, and that's been a strategy that's worked for me to get people to try new ideas, is to just say, let's do it once. Let's try it this year. And then if nothing terrible happens, it becomes a tradition.
That's awesome.
And if something
That's
does, you learn to do something different.
Well, and that willingness to innovate is something we hear a lot from companies, employers,
Absolutely.
looking for talent that has that interest of that little flame of innovation, willing to
It's a
embrace it.
flexibility of thinking.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, thank you. I've
Yeah.
got another question here. This one is coming from Matt, class of 2010.
All right.
And this is, Dr. Vito, as I continue along in my career, it seems that there truly is no secret to success. People tend to make it up as best they can as they go along, and it appears there is no single right way of doing things. But when you look back on your own accomplishments, are there particular attitudes and practices that have best served you in your own successes and failures? That's a little bit what we've been talking about.
It's a really awesome question.
Yeah.
And Matt, you're probably exactly right. I would say the number one thing that served me well is that by nature I'm kind of optimistic. And I learned early on, people want to work with people who feel like they can make things happen or have an optimistic view. So I think being a smart optimist is important. And by smart, I mean you can see the road signs out there, but you have a belief that things can move forward. Flexibility is really an important quality to bring to the workplace. Nobody wants to work with others who are rigid and devoted to one way of doing things, and yet we all can identify those people in our lives, and they're typically people that we don't want in our lives. And so I would say bringing a flexibility of attitude is important, and intellectual curiosity, so that you are that person on a team who's thinking slightly differently about something, or who's read an interesting book or has a different thought to contribute, I think is also really important. And I think I learned early on that every boss I've ever worked for has something that they want to accomplish. And if I can help them move something forward, whether it's in any setting. I have close friends who work in banking, I have close friends who are accountants, I have close friends who are lawyers, and everyone I know has another person that they're trying to please. And if you can find a way to help them move an agenda forward while at the same time doing the things that are meaningful for you, that is an important key to success.
It's a very successful formula right there.
And I've seen too many people resist that, particularly in times of changing leadership.
That's great advice. You mentioned your mom as being one of your early mentors. Have you had other mentors in your career?
I have. I've been blessed with a lot of mentors.
Anybody in particular you want to recognize?
Yeah, I actually would give a shout out to Edie Auslander.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Edie was an early mentor, actually friends with my parents, and I sought her out at a time I had some personal things I was dealing with, and I knew she probably had some similar things, and she was just a great support for me. She, gave me a shower when I was pregnant, and I think at early times in my career really gave me good advice. And so, terrific mentor. I I would say I've had probably reverse mentors.
Uh-huh. They can be helpful too,
And so,
right?
you learn in every setting.
What do you mean by a reverse
And
mentor?
I would say a reverse mentor are people with whom I have a close working relationship or relationship, but really what I'm learning are things never to do or things not to do. And I have a list of those that I've learned from different kinds of settings. And so I would say Edie was a great has been always a great mentor to me. My mom is a great mentor. Sonny Taylor was vice president before me, and she was really that first female that I worked for who had kids and a life and a vibrancy and kind of owned being a female leader. I had the first dean of students who was female was also terrific, but really of an era that was more, you had to wear, men's suits and,
really?
Be careful what you said and not be too fun. And that was a tough one for me because I've always had a Slinky on my desk and always conveyed a sense of energy and fun. And so, I would say those are a few people.
That's great.
But I would say my mom was probably a key mentor.
That's great. So let's see, I've got another question from the audience. This is from a current student named Angelina.
Okay.
What were some of the most influential or impactful things you worked on in your career?
I think big and little things, but I would say during the terrible recession, when we really had to rethink what we were doing, and we rethought things in great ways, a real point of pride for me was actually the birth of the think tank, which was the result of having to eliminate, the Student Learning Center and a whole array of things. But I'm really proud of what we've been able to do, and proud of having something that brings faculty and students and national certification to the academic support we provide for students. So I would say that's something I'm proud of, and that came out of a tough time. When I think about the something where I learned a lot, but I know lasting impact, I would say the Union Bookstore Project.
It's a beautiful bookstore.
It is, and I learned to trust my staff. I remember my bookstore director then was telling me all the things he wanted to do in the bookstore, and I was like, I just don't want it to look like Walmart. I mean, there was no chance it would look like Walmart. I had to trust that it wouldn't, but it's an awesome blend of diversity and modern retailing and a gorgeous community space. And so learned a lot through that process, and it's something that I look back on really fondly. In my early work in Dean of Students area, very early work, we had to work because Title IX at that time required integration of females into what had been men-only honoraries.
Oh, yeah.
And so those were tough times.
Really?
I was a kid. I was in
Interesting.
my 20s then, trying to help work with students and staff members who had always lived certain ways. And I would say it makes me really proud to go to the Bobcats breakfast and see women there. But I also know the personal professional cost and the opportunities for education that all took to get going. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it was.
So here's a question from Jessica. What would you share as your top 3 tips for success in climbing the corporate or career ladder?
Okay.
And you've touched on
I've touched
some of
on
those,
them. So I would say bring optimism to your work. Okay. Energy is number one. And so I think having a sense of energy and commitment and passion for what you do, really important. And then being smart and flexible. So pay attention to what's happening around you and bring that to your work. Too many people only see their role or their job and they ignore the environment. And so I would say always scan the environment in your role.
That's a great
and
advice.
be optimistic and energetic.
That's a great advice. All right, we have another question coming in from our audience. So you've built an amazing career right here at the U of A. Can you talk about career advancement for student affairs professionals and the idea of staying at one institution versus moving around from school to school while building one's career?
Great questions. The standard way to move in higher education is not to stay in one place. And so I would say my move through my roles is probably more unusual than usual, although there are others here, Casey Urquidez, others in student affairs and across campus who've done it. But I knew early on when I was sort of landlocked that I needed to build a diverse array of experiences. So I knew I wanted to be a vice president when I was probably 25, and I knew that I would need to get different experiences. So I didn't want to stay in financial aid forever. And so I ended up working in orientation, which is an awesome role and connects you across the entire campus. But I knew I needed to get Dean of Students work. And so, and all of these were national searches that I would jump into, and sometimes I would get a job, sometimes I wouldn't. And so, you know, you have your own failures and successes and you learn. But if you want to stay in an institution and move forward, I would say build a package of experiences that prepare you for your next move. Let people know you're interested in staying. Sometimes I look at team members who are awesome and think, I wonder what they want to do next, because I'm always looking for how we can promote excellence and progress for people. So if you're working in student affairs in my division or in an area, you need to let people know if you want to stay here and you're thinking about other things. So I think that's important. Ask people what they need and build a career, and then figure it out. I didn't think I would want to leave, and then I had some opportunities to leave. They didn't come at the right time for me. I had kids in high school and single mom, and I just decided I got to stay with them. And then I want to give a shout out to my boss, our president, because I had an opportunity when she was new in her presidency to leave for a lateral position. And that was when she said, you know, let me create some opportunities here for you so that you get a broader array of experiences. And if you want to leave here, I want you to leave here and move into a presidency or a different type of a role. And so I would say I need to put Ann in as a mentor also, and somebody who has helped me. And that was great. And I stayed here, and I have a role that's probably unique nationally, but has been an awesome way for me to learn a lot.
That's terrific. Fantastic. So have you seen tremendous change in higher ed? Not, I shouldn't say have you. I'm sure you have. But how have you seen it? What kind of change have you seen?
All different kinds of changes. I mean, I would say I would say in different ways. So if I think, you know, past decade, lots of focus on Title IX in different ways. So I would say, you know, if you think of Title IX earlier on, it was more about gender equity in sports. And Title IX now is really more about gender violence, sexual assault, and how we deal with those issues. So a kind of a consistent piece, but definitely interpreted differently in a higher education setting. I think that higher education at an earlier point in time, probably in the 80s, had a higher level of sort of trust from the external community. Like people saw higher education as a pathway to success, and university as places that were awesome places to be. I think that for a variety of reasons, higher education is not seen that way by everyone now, and there's a higher level of a need for accountability, which is good. It's not always a pathway to financial success, and I think that's created a lot of dissonance in the workforce and in society. And so I think probably the biggest change I've seen has been one from, embracing and support to one of more skepticism and cynicism at times, and what that means for all of us who work here.
And the need for you to maintain your optimism and flexibility and all of that.
And find the opportunities.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about the article that you had published on entrepreneurship in higher ed?
Oh, it just was a little piece. I think there's an online publication called The Evolution, which is really terrific, and it tends to look at more innovative issues in higher education. So they do a lot around online and teaching, and some of my team have written for them, and so Amrit had been wanting me to do something, and so he said, would you throw something together? So I did, and it was just my thoughts about how you create an environment that promotes entrepreneurism in higher education and why it's important. And so I talked about the need for optimistic leadership, ways that people can fail and succeed, creating rewards for people who do things differently and and move forward, and a lot of stuff like that.
Well,
but that it's actually more seen in the research end than it is on the administrative end,
okay.
and that we need to
Interesting.
approach it more.
Oh, great. So another question from the audience. This
Yep.
is from Susan, class of '09. What does it take to affect true, meaningful change at a large, complicated institution like the U of A?
So it takes vision, persistence, an ability to compromise, an ability to pull together a whole lot of disparate voices so that you can build a broad base of support for whatever kind of change you're promoting, and then team members who are with you all the way and deep, who can sustain that change long after you're gone. And then I always know that to make significant systemic change, I have to accept the fact that environments guide what's important at any given time, and that deep systemic change might morph a little over time, but if the heart of it is still there, that's success.
And then how important is evaluation, assessment?
Continual.
Continual?
Yeah. And actually, thank you. Evaluation's important and champion's important. So always looking to see if you've achieved what you thought you wanted to achieve, adjusting if you haven't, and then making sure that you talk about the successes of what you've done. We have a tendency to not have a strong feedback loop in what we do. We just do what we do, and we need to do a better job of letting people know outcomes.
Awesome. Here's one from Emma, class of 2016. We've got another one coming in. So I'm going to do Emma's first. How
right.
can I set myself apart from other young higher ed professionals?
Same thing, energy, number one, optimism, number two, and then whatever setting you're in, talk to whoever you're working for and ask them if there's something else they need. If there's another role they could take on, if there's some help that you could provide to someone. That is, I would say, a really, really important piece.
That's great. And that, I would say, is relevant wherever you are.
And
Right? Higher
wherever.
ed, wherever you are. If you are seeking out additional responsibility, that's clearly going to get the eye of your supervisor.
Yeah.
Right?
And your supervisor will always have something they need help with.
Right. And they're going to look good because you helped
Exactly.
them move it forward. All right, so you talked about your early aspirations to write as a reporter or an author. Will you write a book at some point, and what would it be about?
I'm not really sure. I've thought about that. There's that tell-all book, that you write.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll do that one. I actually have a group of really close friends, and we've been playing around for years, and it'll probably, God knows if it will ever happen, with something that I observed in my female friendships, that actually the types of relationships that I had in high school, the types of issues that I had with people, the way that people responded, tended to be exactly the same in my 40s and 50s. And so we ended up with a working title of a book called Mean Girls in Menopause that we thought would be kind of fun, that may still happen. Who knows? I'm not really sure. I'd probably be more inclined at this point in my life to do some videos or some talks and do something along those lines.
That's awesome. Mean Girls, I love that title.
Yeah,
That's
I know,
great.
it's great. We've got some pieces.
That's great. All right, I'm looking back through here. We've got one more question coming in on the screen here. And what are you most excited about for the future of the University of Arizona? That's a great question. And for higher education generally, but I'm real curious about your thoughts on the U of A.
I think actually I'm excited about a lot. I think that the past few years, under Dr. Hart's leadership, we have really changed our culture, which was pretty embedded before, harder to make change and less open to new ideas, and created sort of an environment where everybody is more open to new ideas and moving forward. And so I'm very excited about that, because everything I know about what we're going to pick in a new leader is that we will sustain that sense of velocity and movement and continual sort of change and moving forward. So that's exciting to me. On a personal note, I'm really excited about the opportunity to sort of reimagine student learning support and to work with an academic colleague who heads the library, and rather than both of us, as would have happened in the old days, separately putting things together to really put our stamp on a new district for students, on our campus that will be built around support.
Yeah, and expand on that a little bit, because
So-
it's terribly exciting. I
It
think, what
is.
you're-
So Bear Down Gym, for those of you who are listening, for many of you, was a gym maybe where you played basketball or watched basketball. A number of years ago, probably about 5 or 6, we made some administrative moves, and so the think tank had outgrown its space and actually moved over to the floor of Bear Down Gym along with some academic advising areas, and it became our academic support area. Never meant to be there permanently. And meanwhile, the library, as any of us know, aren't the same anymore. Who goes to the library? I wrote my whole dissertation without going to a library. And so, so that's a changing environment, and we have different needs. Students learn differently, different classrooms, and so we're right next door to each other. And so what we are doing is looking at how we actually make Bear Down, to me, very ironic. Modern facility on the back,
awesome.
lots of glass, lots of space for collaborative learning and engagement and excitement. And then the library completely redeveloped, and then the floor of Bear Down returned to sort of a gym, but a modern gym where we have mindfulness and yoga and basketball and a whole
Really?
array of things, because we know that students here have to be successful. You've got to be emotionally successful, physically healthy, feel like you have good academic support and places to connect. So it will really embed all of those things in how we redefine student success. And then I think finally I've got to say one belated answer of things I'm proud of here. I would say the 100% engagement piece
oh, yeah,
is a
that's-
point of pride. And that was something I saw actually when my kids were in school. I thought
Really?
we have to do this. I knew how people were getting jobs and how they were differentiating themselves in a bad economy. And it was work experiences and outside the classroom. So I thought, we got to do this
Yeah,
here.
it's a
and we
fabulous
did.
program.
So,
We appreciate it very much, the
Well,
alumni world. It's
thank you.
great. It
But-
creates
but
great
that's
opportunities.
a thing. Yeah.
Melissa, it's been awesome spending time with
Hey,
you.
thanks.
We are actually, this
Out of
hour
time?
has flown by.
Awesome.
So
Thank
you
you.
so much. We appreciate you spending time
Thank
with
you.
us, and you are absolutely one of our best
No.
cats in the corner office ever.
Hey, thank
So,
you. And
thank
thanks
you.
for the opportunity.
You're very
Thanks
welcome.
a ton.
All
Thank
right.
you. All right.
Bear down.
Cool.